Please proceed.
Bringing in the Yule log was bringing in a light and keeping that light going. Don't let the flame go out. Maybe the sun will not come back. And light candles against the darkness and dance in their glow. And greenery, holly, ivy, mistletoe. It's green in the dead of winter. It's living. How can that be? It's miraculous. Bring it in. Deck the halls with it. Worship it. So the greenery and the light, these were signs that it would all come back. And signs of that it will get us through this dark time, that there will be sun and warmth. And when the early Christians were looking at their celebration, they too needed the reassurance of life beyond death. And so they brought in the traditions of the solstice into a Christmas celebration. So tonight, we will warm ourselves with the light of literature. Sit back as we share poems and stories that capture the joys of this special season in a year that we need joy more than ever. And I'm going to start with a poem by William Cowper. He was an English poet and an Anglican hymn writer, lived from 1731 to 1800, and one of the most popular poets of his day. And he changed the direction of 18th century poetry by writing of everyday life and scenes of the English countryside. His poem is A Winter Evening, and it captures exactly what we are doing here tonight. Now stir the fire and close the shutters fast. Let fall the curtains, wheel the sofa round. And while the bubbling and loud hissing urn throws up a steamy column, and the cups that cheer but not inebriate wait on each, so let us welcome peaceful evening in. O winter, ruler of the inverted year, thy scattered hair with sleet like ashes filled, thy breath congealed upon thy lips, thy cheeks fringed with a beard made white with other snows than those of age, thy forehead wrapped in clouds, a leafless branch thy scepter, and thy throne a sliding car with no wheels, but urged by storms along its slippery way. I love thee, as unlovely as thou seemst, and dreaded as thou art. I crown thee king of intimate delights, fireside enjoyments, home-born happiness, and all the comforts that the lowly roof of undisturbed retirement and the hours of long uninterrupted evening know. There is magic in that circle around that fire, but there's also magic out in the dark, in that snow. And sometimes it's when we least do. Do you still see me? The Robert Frost tells us about that. It is called Dust of Snow. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had ruined. Well, someone who knew cold was Robert Louis Stevenson, born in Scotland in 1850. He was born into a family of lighthouse designers. The whole Stevenson clan was famous for building lighthouses all over the British Isles. And his uncles, his grandfather, his father. Stevenson was a sickly lad and did not go into the seafaring trade. He, of course, became a writer. But his writing is certainly affected by his family's trade. He wrote Treasure Island. And for several years at Christmas, he traveled to inspect the family's engineering works at lighthouses. So he knew the cold on a ship. His book is called, his poem, Christmas at Sea. The sheets were frozen hard, and they cupped the naked hand, and the decks were like a slide a seaman scarce could stand, and the wind was a nor'wester, blowing squalid off the sea, and cliffs and spouting breakers were the only things aleaf. They heard the surf a-roaring before the break of day, but 'twas only with the peep of light we saw how ill we lay. We tumbled every hand on deck, instanter, with a shout, and we gave her the main topsail and stood by to go about. All day we tacked and tacked between the south head and the north, and all day we hauled the frozen sheets and got no further forth. All day as cold as charity, in bitter pain and dread, for very life and nature we tacked from head to head. We gave the south a wider berth, for there the tide race roared. But every tack we made, we brought the north head close aboard. So as we saw the cliff and the houses and the breakers running high, and the coast guard in his garden with his glass against his eye. The frost was on the village roofs, as white as ocean foam. The good red fires were burning bright in every longshore home. The windows sparkled clear, and the chimneys volleyed out, and I vow we sniffed the victuals as the vessel wheeled about. The bells upon the church were rung with mighty jovial cheer, for it's just that I should tell you how, of all days of the year, this day of our adversity was blessed Christmas morn, and the house above the coast guards was the house where I was born. Ah, well, I saw the pleasant room and the pleasant faces there, my mother's silver spectacles and my father's silver hair. And well, I saw the firelight like a flight of homely elves go dancing round the china plates that stand upon the shelves. And well, I knew the talk they had, the talk that was of me, of the shadow on the household and the sun that went to sea. And oh, the wicked fool I seemed, in every kind of way, to be here and hauling frozen ropes on blessed Christmas Day. They lit the high sea light, and the dark began to fall. All hands loose top-gallant sails, I heard the captain call. By the Lord shall never stand it, our first mate Jackson cried. It's one way or the other, Mr. Jackson, he replied. She staggered to her bearings, but the sails were new and good, and the ship smelt up to windward just as though she understood. As the winter's day was ending and the entry of the night, we cleared the weary headland and passed below the light. And they heaved a mighty breath, every soul on board but me. as they saw her nose again, pointing handsome out to sea. But all that I could think of in the darkness and cold was just that I was leaving home, and my folks were growing old. Well,
Wow.
William Wordsworth is going to give us a closer look at that village, perhaps, that we're seeing from the sea and what's going on there. Wordsworth, of course, the most famous of English poets, born in 1770, lived till 1850, known for daffodils, and also wrote of winter. He wrote of a Christmas custom of the village musicians, usually members of the parish church choir, strolling from door to door, playing their instruments, wishing good cheer, and hoping for a little something in return. His poem is called Minstrels. The minstrels played their Christmas tune tonight beneath my cottage eaves, while, smitten by a lofty moon, the encircling laurels, thick with leaves, gave back a rich and dazzling sheen that overpowered their natural green. Through hill and valley, every breeze has sunk to rest with folded wings. Keen was the air, but could not freeze, nor check the music of the strings. So stout and hardy were the band that scraped the chords with strenuous hand. And who but listened till was paid respect to every innate's claim, the greeting given, the music played in honor of each household name, duly pronounced with lusty call, and a Merry Christmas wished to all. Well, now we're going to go inside, and our guide will be Charles Dickens. And no, it is not A Christmas Carol. Dickens' first novel was The Pickwick Papers. He'd had success with his Sketches by Boz. It's sort of sketches of daily London life. And it was published in 1836 to great success. Well, Dickens was asked by the publisher Chapman and Hall to supply descriptions to explain a series of comic drawings by illustrator Robert Seymour, and to connect those drawings into a novel. And this was The Pickwick Papers, and it was a phenomenal success. So we will hear Charles Dickens' first descriptions of an English Christmas 7 years before Scrooge came on the scene. The chapter is Christmas at Dingley Dell. From the center of the ceiling, old Wardle had just suspended with his own hand a huge branch of mistletoe, and the same branch of mistletoe instantaneously gave rise to a scene of general and delightful scrambling and confusion, in the midst of which Mr. Pickwick, with a gallantry that would have done honor to the descendant of Lady Tollingower herself, took the old lady by her hand, led her beneath the mystic branch, and saluted her in all courtesy and decorum. The old lady submitted to this piece of practical politeness with all the dignity which befitted so important and serious a solemnity. But the younger ladies, not being so thoroughly imbued with a superstitious veneration for the custom, or imagining that the value of a salute very much was enhanced if it cost a little trouble to obtain it. They screamed and they struggled and they ran into corners and threatened and remonstrated and did everything but leave the room, until some of the less adventurous gentlemen were on the point of desisting, when they all at once found it useless to resist any longer and submitted to be kissed with a good grace. Mr. Winkle kissed the young lady with the black eyes, and Mr. Snodgrass kissed Emily, and Mr. Weller, not being particular about the form of being under the mistletoe, kissed Emma and the other female servants just as he caught them. As to the poor relations, they kissed everybody. Wardle stood with his back to the fire, surveying the whole scene with utmost satisfaction, and the fat boy took the opportunity of appropriating to his own use and summarily devouring the particularly fine mince pie that had been carefully set aside for somebody else. Now the screaming subsided, and faces were in a glow and curls in a tangle, and Mr. Pickwick, after kissing the old lady, as before mentioned, was standing under the mistletoe, looking with a very pleased countenance on all that was passing around him, when the young lady with the black eyes, after a little whispering with the other young ladies, made a sudden dart forward and, putting her arm around Mr. Pickwick's neck, saluted him affectionately on the left cheek. And before Mr. Pickwick distinctly knew what was the matter, he was surrounded by the whole body and kissed by every one of them. It was a pleasant thing to see Mr. Pickwick in the center of the group, now pulled this way and then that, and first kissed on the chin and then on the nose and then on the spectacles, and to hear the peals of laughter which were raised on every side. Oh, and still a more pleasant thing to see Mr. Pickwick blinded shortly afterwards with a silk handkerchief, and falling up against the wall and scrambling into corners and going through all the mysteries of blind man's buff. Oh, when they were tired of that game, there was a great game at Snapdragon. And when fingers enough were burned with that, and all the reasons gone, they sat down before a huge fire of blazing logs to a substantial supper, and a mighty bowl of wassail, in which the hot apples were hissing and bubbling with a rich look and a jolly sound that were perfectly irresistible. "This," said Mr. Pickwick, looking round him, "this is indeed comfort." "Our invariable custom," replied Mr. Wardle. "Everybody sits down with us on Christmas Eve, as you see them now, servants and all. And here we wait until the clock strikes 12 to usher Christmas Eve and beguile the time with forfeits and old stories. Trundle, my boy, rake up the fire." Up flew the bright sparks in myriads as the logs were stirred. The deep red blaze sent forth a rich glow that penetrated into the furthest corner of the room, cast its cheerful tint on every face. Well, Charles Mackay, a poet and writer, Scottish, born March 1814, died on Christmas Eve, 1889. He was a novelist, songwriter, remembered mostly for his book, extraordinary popular delusions and madness of crowds. Well, he wrote a poem about such a gathering, about the mirth and the warmth of the fire and the wassail, but it's also about what you should bring to such a gathering, which is forgiveness. 'Tis the season. It is called the Holly Bough. Ye who have scorned each other, or injured friend or brother in this fast fading year, ye who by word or deed have made a kind heart bleed, come, gather here. Let sinned against and sinning forget their strife's beginning, and join in friendship now. Be links no longer broken, be sweet forgiveness spoken under the holly bough. Ye who have loved each other, sister and friend and brother, in this fast fading year, mother and sire and child, young man and maiden mild, come, gather here, and let your hearts grow fonder, as memory shall ponder each past unbroken vow. Old love and younger wooing are sweet in the renewing under the holly bough. Well, we have been in merry old England for Christmas, but it's time to cross the pond to America. I'm bringing you over here to the 1950s and the African American author named Alice Childress. Alice was born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1920, and she was raised and educated in Harlem. She was a pioneering actress, novelist, and playwright. But to do all of that, she had to have odd jobs constantly to make it through. She was an assistant machinist sometimes. She was a photo retoucher. She was a sales lady. She was an insurance agent. She joined the Negro Theater Ensemble in Harlem in 1940, acting alongside unknowns like Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte. She also did domestic work because she had to for a few months. But this provided her with a firsthand experience of the job that she would later depict in her novel, Like One of the Family. This book is 62 chapters. It's all told from the perspective of Mildred, a domestic servant in New York City, talking to her friend Marge. You can see by this novel, her theater is really in high form. But remember, this was written in 1956. So what's fascinating is to look at the race relations and see how far we've come and how far we have to go. It's called Merry Christmas, Marge. Merry Christmas, Marge. Girl, I just want to sit down and catch my breath for a minute. I had half a day off and went Christmas shopping. Oh, them department stores is just like a madhouse. They had a record playing real loud and all over Crumley's. Peace on earth. Well, sir, I looked around at all them scuffling folks and I begin to wonder, what is peace? You know, Marge, I hear so much talk about peace. I see it written on walls. I hear about it on the radio, and Christmas time, you can't cut around a corner without hearing it blaring out of every storefront. Peace, peace, peace. Marge, what is peace? Well, you're partly right. Yeah, it do mean not having any and wars. But I've been doing some deep thinking since I left Crumley's. And I've been asking myself, how would things have to be in order for me to be at peace with the world? Oh, well, thank you, dear. Yeah, I will take an eggnog. Nobody can make it like you do. Mm, that's some good, I tell you. Well, it began to come to my mind. If I had no cause to hate white folks, that would be good. And if I could like most of them, that would be peace. Don't laugh, Marge, because I'm talking deep stuff now. If I could stand on the street and walk in any direction that my toes was pointing, and go in one of them pretty apartment houses and say, "Give me an apartment, please." And the man would turn around and say, "Why, it should be a pleasure, man. We'll notify you about it first vacancy." That would be peace. Do you hear me? If I stride up to any employment agency without having the folk at the desk stuttering and stammering, yeah, that, my friend, would be peace also. If I could ride a subway or a bus and not see any signs pleading with folks to be tolerant regardless of what I am, I know that would be peace, because then there'd be no need for them signs. And if you and me, if we could have a cool glass of lemonade or a hot cup of coffee anywhere, I mean anywhere, that, my friend, would be peace also. In these little children around here had their moms taking care of them instead of other folks' children, that would be peace too. Oh, hold on, Marge, go easy on that eggnog. It goes to my head. Oh yes. If nobody wanted to kill nobody else, and if I could pick up a newspaper and not read about my folks getting the short end of every stick, that would mean more peace. If all mamas and daddies were sitting back safe and secure in the knowledge that they have toys and goodies for their children, that would bring on a little more peace. If eggs and butter would stop flirting around the dollar sign, I would consider that a peaceful sign. Oh, darling, let's not even talk about meat. So when all these things are fixed up the way I want them, I'm going to spend one peaceful Christmas. And do you know what I do? Look, Marge, I told you, don't give me too much of that eggnog. My dear, I'd catch me a plane for Alice, Georgia, somewhere, and visit all my friends and go around from door to door hollering Christmas gift. And then we'd go to Main Street and ride front, middle, and rear on the streetcar. And the white folk would wave and cry out, "Merry Christmas, neighbors." Oh, hush now, they would do this because they'd understand peace. And we'd all go to the same church. And afterwards, we'd all go to the same movie and see Lena Horne acting and singing all the way through a picture. Oh, and I'd have to visit a school so that I could see a Black teacher teaching white kids. And when I see this, I'll sing out, peace is truly wonderful. Oh, then I'd go and watch the Black governor and the white mayor unveiling a bronze statue of Frederick Douglass and John Brown shaking him. And when I was ready to leave, I'd catch me a Pullman back to New York. Now that's what you call sleeping in heavenly peace. And when I get home, the bells and horns would be ringing and tooting, Happy New Year, and there wouldn't be no mothers mourning for their soldier sons. And children would be prancing and riding Christmas sleds through sparkling snow. And the words lynch, murder, and kill would be crossed out of every dictionary. And nobody would write peace on no walls, because it would be peace, and our hearts would be free. What? No, I'm not crazy either. All that's going to happen, just as sure as God made little apples. I promise you that. Do you know who's going to be there to see it? Me, girl. Yes, your friend Mildred. Now let's you and I have another eggnog on you. Here's to it. Merry Christmas, Marge. Well, she mentions the soldiers. So I'd like to end with a reminiscence from World War II. It's a memory of Olive Noah. She is describing a bus ride from the southern Minnesota town on Christmas Eve in 1943. It didn't promise to be the best of Christmas Eves. America was in the midst of World War II. By the time I arrived at the little bus depot in Albert Lee, Minnesota, a crowd of impatient travelers, many of them servicemen, were waiting for the bus. I was eager to get home to my family. My younger brother was already talking about enlisting in the Marines. This might be the last Christmas we would be together for a long time. My thoughts were also on a certain soldier overseas who was very special to me. Well, there was a collective sigh of relief when the bus came in, rounded the corner, and stopped. But then dismay when, after a few passengers departed, we saw the bus was still full. And the bus driver just shook his head. There wasn't any more room. Well, suddenly, the young sailor called out, "Hey, let them on. We'll share our seats so no one has to be left behind." And others on the bus said, "Yes, come on aboard." Well, within minutes, there were 3 and 4 people snuggled into seats for 2, and some people sitting on others' laps. And as our packed busload of strangers sped through the night, someone began softly singing, "Silent night, holy night." And one by one, we all joined in. All is calm, all is bright, until every passenger was singing, "Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Away in a manger, no crib for a bed." Oh, and that new song, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know. We laughed, we sang, we shared candy and cookies with each other. And we watched misty-eyed at the stops as departing servicemen, who only a few minutes before had been so cool, cried unashamedly as they were embraced by waiting wives and mothers and fathers. When the bus reached my destination, the remaining passengers shouted out, "Merry Christmas, Happy New Year." Well, when the war ended, my special soldier returned home and we were married. And since then, we've spent many happy Christmas Eves together with our children and more recently, our grandchildren. Yet I doubt if I'll ever again experience the same feeling of peace and contentment that came over me that night during the war. As I stood there, watching the bus disappear into the night, I was eager to be home, but reluctant to break the spell of fellowship. The snow had stopped falling, and the sky studded with stars. I thought of the awe that must have gripped the hearts of those long ago shepherds who had once gazed at a star over Bethlehem. And I understood, even in the midst of war, there could still be peace on earth, goodwill to me. So she mentioned songs, so we'll end with one. When we look into that solstice fire, roaring or in embers, it always makes people contemplate, right? You look into a fire and you just think of your memories of the past. You think of childhood. You think of friends, family, people who are gone, and people who are very far away. And it's a season for that too, that yearning. And the masterful song written in 1943 and sung on that bus after White Christmas was this one, of longing for home and the past. I'll be home for Christmas. You can plan on me. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents on the tree. Christmas Eve will find me where the love light gleams. I'll be home for Christmas. If only it might be. Happy solstice, happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. You may unmute.
You can unmute if you want now. Thank you so much, Linda. That was wonderful. We never think of you without thinking of song, and that's why I automatically
Yes.
mentioned song at the beginning. And That's a great one. Thank you.
That was really wonderful. I think you outdid yourself.
It was really fun putting it together. I found stuff I never knew existed, so I really appreciated the task.
Hmm.
Thanks, Linda. Happy solstice.
Hey, Ridley and Ann.
Hi.
Thank you.
There's Abby.
Yep, I finally got on.
Hi, Abby.
Hi.
Oh, I
How
want to
you
see.
all?
I can't see anybody, and nobody's.
Here's Uncle Rid. Uncle Rid.
I've got my gallery thing on.
There's Sally. Hi, Sally. That's my cousin from California. My cousin from California.
Ah.
Hi.
Hello. This is your brother from Colfax, Wisconsin.
Ah.
I know Jeff is here too.
Abby, there's Abby.
Hi,
And Jeff
Abby.
is here. Hi.
Says so.
Okay, good.
Hello, Uncle Riddy and Auntie Anne. Good to see you all.
Hi, Sam. Hi, Sally.
Oh, nice, a reunion.